Maurice. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast. I was hopped on YouTube and I was scrolling and I saw your interview on the 700 Club. And I was like, I have to reach out. And in that interview, you had mentioned that you moved to Las Vegas. And I happened to be in Las Vegas at the time. So I looked you up on social media and you actually responded. So thank you so much for being on. And I'm so excited. And tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Mhm.
Maurice Hicks, I'm a native Baltimorean. I'm born and raised here. I moved to Las Vegas after retiring from the police department. So I was a police officer for 20 years, 2 years in Baltimore City, and 18 years with Prince George's County. And while with the police department, I worked a variety of assignments. Frankly, I grew up as pretty much an introvert. Had no interest in law enforcement whatsoever. And something happened that kind of changed the trajectory of my life. I was about 10 or 11 years old. I was living across the street from basically a heroin den. And I would see people shooting up heroin. This particular day, they burglarized my mentor's house, who was 2 doors down from me. And when they were bringing the property back to this abandoned garage where they were shooting up heroin, one of the young men lifted up his shirt and he showed me his gun and he motioned me not to say anything. So I remember sitting there. I was horrified, petrified, afraid not only what he would do to me, but to my family. And then it was this code growing up that you never tell on anyone for anything. A few hours later, my mentor came home and she asked me a very simple question. She said, "Did you see anything?" And I hesitated for what seemed like an eternity. And I said, no. And that is something that troubled me for years. So I grew up, wondering, having this sense of guilt about not telling, my mentor about it. So fast forward, I'm 11 years old. So about 6 years later, I won't go down with a friend of mine who's interested in joining the military. And I had no interest whatsoever in the military. So the recruiter said, "Son, while you're here, I want you to take this test." So I was an obedient young man. So I said, "Yes, sir." So I ended up joining the Marine Corps and he didn't. Then I ended up going to the reserve. 4 years after that, my cousin was interested in joining the police department in Baltimore. I had no interest whatsoever in joining. He asked me to go down with him. So I said, okay. While I was there, the recruiter said, "Son, I'm glad to see the two of you want to join the force." I said, "Sir, I'm just here with my cousin." He said, "While you're here, son, won't you take this test?" So I'm like, "Yes, sir." So I joined it. So I'm joining. That's how I'm joining the police department in Baltimore.
Oh my goodness. Wow. You got redirected quite a few times there on your journey. That is such an interesting story of how you ended up in the career that you were in. I love it. I love it.
Yes, and it actually happened to me a third time, believe it or not. Briefly, my partner in Baltimore wanted to join the Prince George's County Police Department. Same thing. I went down with him, and I'm glad to see the two people want to join the force. And I said, "Sir, I'm here with my friend, my partner." He said, "Why are you here, son? Would you take this test?" I was like, "Yes, sir." I joined. He didn't. So there's 3 times I went down with somebody and I joined. They didn't. So that's how I got into the field.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that is so cool. Well, thank you for not only your military service, but also your time, that you're serving the community and everything that you've done. And it's so interesting, that you're saying that like the guilt of not telling about what happened just really ate at you. And so obviously, the Holy Spirit was like convicting your spirit, right? All along the
Yeah.
way. Oh, and I love that you ended up where you were. So go ahead and tell me. I always like to ask on my podcast your religious background. So, because obviously that's why I have you on here because my podcast is about religion. So, did you grow up in a religious household? And maybe did you ever lose faith on that journey?
Well, I can tell you precisely how, it started. So when I grew up, my stepfather used to tell me that I was stupid and I would never amount to anything. And this had devastating mental and emotional effects on me. So I got to the point I just couldn't take it anymore and I ran away from home. And when I ran away from home, that's went to my grandfather's house where they had the heroin den and everything. So my grandfather said to me, and when I ran away from home, I ended up bed in the middle of the night and he opened the door and said, "Oh my God, Maurice, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm stupid and I never amount to anything." He said, "Maurice, you have a good heart and a good mind, and you're going to make a tremendous difference in this world." And I was just clueless of what he was talking about. So my grandfather had actually spent most of his adult life in prison, and he had learned the power of faith while he was in prison. So he started sending me to Sunday school.
Oh.
And that's when I had my first experience, and I learned about my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I would use my faith to get through this intensive military training, through the challenges in law enforcement. So after I started going to Sunday school, I started devouring those Sunday school lessons, learned that I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And
Amen.
I was able to, overcome this, the stigma. I was the only male in my family who never, I was the only male in my family to ever attend college, only second male in my family to graduate from
Wow.
high school. So I was trying to break those generational curses. And throughout my life, I would always lean on God, go back to those scriptures in order to defeat a defendant foe, a determined foe in many aspects of my life.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. I love your testimony. And did you ever go through a period of time, though, maybe where you started to stray the other way? Or was it just once you were introduced to Christ, that was it for you? And you were a follower from there?
That was pretty much it for me. I still had the challenge of overcoming the stigma of being told I was stupid and I would never amount to anything.
Mhm.
But I would always, the way I would describe it, I would revert back to my spiritual training, my
Yeah.
Sunday school lessons that, that had a significant impact on my life. And even I remember when I was in the Marine Corps and training, I was pretty much a nerd. So I was an immediate target, immediate target. And I remember drill instructors saying to me, and this really was a trigger for me. He said, something, son, there's just something different about you. I knew that the minute I laid eyes on you. You're different from these other boys. He
Yeah.
said, you don't belong here. What are you doing here, son? Tell me
That's
what I want to
funny.
hear. And as he would give me this incentive physical training, and I would be down there doing those push-ups and sweating, and he laughed at me and said, son, there's nowhere in the world you're going to get off this island. You're my classroom problem. I'm going to teach you a lesson. And I was really ready to break many times. And when he said, you're different, you're not like these other boys. And it kind of was a trigger for my stepfather. But then I would again revert back. I would, be doing some more push-ups or leg lifts. And I would just think about my Sunday school lessons. Think about David. He was rejected by his father.
Mhm.
His father didn't believe in him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
His
he
whole
was
family. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, he was chastised, but it was all a setup for him to fight Goliath,
Mhm.
even though the oil didn't flow on him, on the rest of the brothers. They called him in from the shepherd's field and it flowed on him. And that's how I kind of feel like with me, I was look as the least likely to succeed, but I look at stories like David, and it really gave me encouragement.
Wow, that's so incredible. I love it. I actually just watched House of David on Netflix. So that's just so cool. That is so cool. I love that you refer back to scripture and, obviously you're using specific Bible stories that really carried you through that mirror your life. So you are the modern day David and Goliath. So I love that. I love that. And tell a little bit. I know on the interview that I watched, I did watch the entire thing, that there were God moments throughout your career that helped you solve some cases.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
tell us, a little bit about that and those magical moments where God was in it.
Yeah, so this young kid who grew up in a heroin den and became an undercover narcotics detective, of all things. And while I'm
Wow.
there, while I'm a rookie, I meet this aspiring drug kingpin. So I'm a rookie, and he's a aspiring drug kingpin. He ascends in the drug trade, and I end up becoming a detective, and I end up spearheading FBI homicide task force. And we had these individuals who are basically wreaking havoc in the community. They're looking for people in the neighborhood to devour, and people are terrified. They're living like I did under siege. And just the way I even got involved in the case was just a miracle from God. Because if I can say that, tell you real quick, the uh, the chief of detectives calls down to the commander of major narcotics and he asks him a simple question. He said, there's a drug dealer who's killing people. And they say, and they said that he's a big time drug dealer. So tell me, Lieutenant, which one of your hot shots have him under investigation? Because you got all that manpower down there. I know you had somebody, working on him. So my lieutenant said he was sweating bullets and he had the clerk check the computer and he said, it showed I had an active investigation. So he's like, yeah, one of my men is investigating me, has made some arrests in the case. So then he calls me in his office. He said, you know something, Maurice? All these other guys walk around here think they're God's gift to narcotics. But guess what? They didn't have an investigation. So you're going to go to homicide. So I was transferred to homicide first. And then later, it became an FBI task force, and I was sworn in as a FBI, a special deputized as an FBI agent. So this guy had avoided apprehension for 10 years. The best homicide detectives couldn't catch him. Best station detective, best narcotics, the best of the brightest of narcotics couldn't catch him. So I'm investigating this guy, and we get to a point where we're taking the case to court, and we found out there's an error. The federal prosecutor made a significant error. What he did was he presented some evidence, some drug evidence, but we have no connection to the kingpin because we're doing multiple raids. So I'm like, oh my goodness,
Mm.
what do we do? People have entrusted me, witnesses and everybody have entrusted me. What do I do? You got this federal prosecutor who's a Harvard graduate.
Mm, yeah.
You got all these other legal minds, and I just went back and prayed. I'm like, God, please, I've come too far. These people have lost their lives. And about 3:30 in the morning, it came to me. God said, subpoena the woman. It was a woman that was present when we executed the search warrant. And she wasn't charged with anything, but she was a link pin. So I went to the federal prosecutor again, this Harvard graduated who was saying, oh boy, he didn't know what to do. And that had me really, concerned when he was calm. And so when I told him that, he was like in shock. And that's exactly what we did. We subpoenaed the woman, and she linked to drugs, and that way it kept the case from being thrown out. I mean, he's talking about years of work, federal, state, local law enforcement authorities, and that one aspect almost cost us the whole case.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just such a testimony that, so many people live their lives thinking, well, if you do X, Y, Z, then this is going to be the outcome, right? But in moments like this, it comes down to there was nothing else you could do but pray. And
Yes.
you prayed and it came to you at 3:30 in the morning. The answer came to you to subpoena her. And it's just proof that prayer works, and that when you invite God into it, that miracles can happen. And I love that. I love that you are just this walking testimony of so many amazing things that God has done, not just in your life, but obviously have saved others' lives as well. And then I think that there was a couple more instances
Yes.
where God was in your cases, right? So tell us about those. Some of my episodes are like an hour long, so we have all the time. I want people to hear this and run out and buy your book as well, because I know you wrote a book about all of this. So go
Yes.
ahead, tell me the next one, because
Yes.
I'm intrigued.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was walking foot patrol in the high-rise projects, and my partner now, and I'm a rookie. I've only got about 6 months on the job, so I'm not. I don't have a lot of
Yeah.
credibility with the veterans. So we're
Yeah.
standing out front, and we saw these four individuals walking together, and I kind of looked at him, and one of them was in front of the rest of the guys, and he looked back, and it was just something not right with him. So, like, God let me believe just something is not right. And I just felt so strongly about it. So I nudged my
Mm.
partner, this veteran, and I said, something's not right with these guys. And he's like, oh Lord, okay. So we start following them into the project. And I tell you, when we made eye contact with them, I knew something was right. They saw a ghost, I tell you. They
Yeah.
took off, and we started chasing them in the projects, and we're chasing them up this tier, that tier, and stuff like that. And I tell you, they're running, and it sounds like an elephant stampede. You hear their foot. They are getting it. And finally, they drop this bag, and it's a big leather bag, and their children out there, toddlers, and they go to unzip the bag, and I'm running, and I'm like, now my lungs are scorched. My partner, he just, and I'm like, what in the heck is in that bag? And finally, I was able to get to the bag, and full of Molotov cocktails.
Wow.
So they were planning to firebomb someone's house. And there's only there's actually two ways out of the projects, but mainly everybody uses the front entrance. The other one's kind of hard to get to. So I knew that was going to be a disaster. And all these little children I used to see out there when I would walk foot patrol, would be like, "Hi, police! Hi, police!" And I'm thinking, what would have happened to these children if God had not let me
Yeah, to
pursue
just
that?
have that feeling. Yeah, you had no evidence at that moment, but you decided to act on it, in a legal way, just simply follow them and go on that hunch because you were convicted by the Holy Spirit. That is just incredible. You definitely saved a lot of lives that day. And, again, just thank you for your service. It just gives me chills. And I hope that this your testimony and your book gets back to those people to understand, what it is that saved them that day, which was God through you. So that's beautiful.
Yes,
And I think that there was another one as well, if I'm correct, at least one
oh,
more.
I can tell you another police one. I can tell you another one involved the time when I was a private investigator.
Okay,
And so
please.
my sergeant used to say, Maurice, you're the only person I know. You could find somebody being victimized in a crime by a crime at 6 o'clock in the morning in the dead of winter. He's, so I said, Sarge, I said, I just got this feeling that something's just not right in Bladensburg, this little town, right? So sure enough, I ride down there and the lady's waving me down again. This is dead winter time, freezing cold. She flags me down and I'm like, so what's wrong? And she's like, won't get it out. I'm like, what's wrong, man? And she's standing, I'm on the street, and then she's standing in front of an apartment building. So I get out the car and I said, what's wrong? And she looks up, she said, he's got a gun. He could have just shot me. I said, oh Lord. I said, well, I saw him with his hand down, right? So I said, oh my goodness. So anyway, he had threatened to kill her and stuff.
Oh,
So it
wow.
went up going in eventually. He surrounded the place and getting him to come out, but he had threatened to kill her. Yeah, so I was like,
Wow.
yeah, so, but I just knew something was leading me there. But and then I just had no idea. The guy was on the other side of the balcony, so I didn't think it was nothing, but something just wasn't right. So I ended up, yeah, he was threatening to kill her.
Wow. Wow. That is so cool. And it's just this deep feeling, and I too have had those feelings. I'm very in tune with the Lord as well. And I just you have that feeling that grabs your full attention and you're like, I can't ignore it. I can't ignore it. And obviously, you've practiced this throughout your entire life. And so you're pretty in tune with those, right? So the second that you feel that, you just immediately listen and
Yes,
obey.
and it's something I teach in our mentor class at church, and it's something I try to
Um,
teach my mentees, about the using your God-given instincts to survive on the street. How
mhm,
not to ignore things that come to your mind. Yeah,
mhm.
so it's fine. It's fun. For years, people said, Maurice, you got into it. Like you have ESP or something. That's not ESP, but I do have those God-given instincts. And then
Mhm.
eventually people start saying, you do have those God-given instincts.
Yeah, people probably thought you were crazy at first, especially like you said, your boss. And you're like, "No, no, I got a feeling about this." Oh my goodness.
Yes, and eventually, because I would be accurate so many times, that then my colleagues start saying, "Hey, this kid has great instinct. Let's listen to the kid. He has great instincts." And I
Wow.
took the same instincts into. I became a private investigator after my 20 years with the police department. A lot of times, people were having a lot of problems and stuff, and I felt like it was divine intervention because people would find me and I would pray with them, about the situation
Oh,
that were going on. Even I used to serve legal papers too, and I would pray with people, serve the papers, and they would tell me, what they're
oh.
going through. I always felt like it was divine interventions. But I had one particular case, this young lady who was on heroin, and I remember I was interviewed by a mother and father. They interviewed a lot of private investigators, and but they heard the compassion in my voice, and because I had the background in narcotics, they ended up selecting me. A lot of the other ones were talking about how great they were, but they didn't have the compassion, according to the mother. So that's why she
Oh.
selected me. And I had three daughters. One of my daughters' name was Alexis. Her daughter's name was Alexa. So she saw I had daughters, so that's why she selected me to be the private investigator.
Oh.
So she comes to Las Vegas, goes to a rehabilitation center. I think it was the second day. They took all the patients to the gym, and then Alexa and her and another lady, they left. They had no ID, no money, no anything. And the other person who left, she died of an overdose the same day.
Man.
So now I'm under the gun because I don't know whether she took a dose of the same heroin or what the situation is. At the time, I did a lot of different cases, but I never worked a missing person case. So, I had this heavy burden, after listening to this family, like, if I don't find this young lady, she could be dead. How am I going to call these people? and telling them, that I failed. So I did what I always do. I started praying. You know,
Oh.
Heavenly Father, give me the wisdom and discernment. Give me the skills to locate this young lady.
Maurice, you're making me cry.
Good. Yeah.
Mm.
So I pray. I said, Lord, please don't let me fail. Of all the cases, don't let me fail this one. So I started going to different places, and it was a needle in a haystack because Uh, Vegas is a very transient town. People are, well, you were there, right? It's a very
Yeah.
transient town. It's not, they don't have a sense of community as much as some other places I've lived because people come there, then they find out they can't make it, and then they leave. And plus, she didn't know anybody. She's not from Las Vegas. She's from Arizona. She didn't know anybody. She had no electronics. So this is just pure police work, hitting the street. And I took a page out of my police background, and I had everybody in the intelligence loop. Every vendor, every homeless person,
Mhm.
every hotel manager, 7-Eleven, had everybody. So I would go out there and they're like, Detective, have you heard anything yet? I said, no, not yet. People got to know me, got to know who I was. People always looking, I'm like, hey, please, So I put these missing person flyers out, and her mother gave me some really good advice. That's why you have to learn to listen to people. She said, can you do me a favor? I had the Las Vegas police phone number on there, and I had my phone number. She said, do me a favor. Take their phone number and just leave yours. So just 2 weeks later, I get this call, 5 o'clock in the morning, exactly, precisely 5 o'clock in the morning, because I never would turn my phone off, because I never knew I would get the call. So I get the call 5 o'clock in the morning. Somebody called me and they had seen her. I raced out of the house, telling you, I swiped the pole.
Oh, bless
I'm,
your
I'm,
heart.
I've got to get there. So I fly out there and I stake out a location where I meet with the guy and he shows me and tells me where she was. So I watch her come out where she was, and I followed her to the location. So I said, hey, let me buy you some breakfast or a cup of coffee or something. She said, no, you just give me some money. So I'm like, well, actually, I'm a private investigator that your family hired. She said, well, I don't want to come home. I said, oh, no. So then some guy tried to pick her up in the alley, right? And I started blowing my horn, please get away from my wife. What are you doing, my wife? So the guy got scared. He pulled off. He pulled off.
Oh.
So she said, I'm an adult. I don't want to go. And I said, well, I knew she had a warrant on her. So I got on the phone and I called Las Vegas Police Department. I'm like, well, I'm going to get it there one way or the other. I'm going to get off the street.
Yeah.
Las Vegas Police Department, they pulled up and they talked to me. And then I told them. Then she took off running. And then they started chasing her. Then she started running the other way. I blocked off with my car. Right? So I'm like, get her. Because I had no thought of the police anymore. I'm like, get her.
Aw.
So they were able to verify that she had a warrant. They took her back to Phoenix, Arizona, where she went to a Christian rehab center, and then she's able to get sober, and she's opened her second rehabilitation center in Phoenix, Arizona, and she's doing these tremendous things. I mean, I went to visit her. I won this book award, and I got to visit her and her mother, and talk about everything. I just had a wonderful time, and I was just so happy. And she told me all the things she was doing with these rehabilitation centers, and I was just so happy. It just gave me so much joy to see it.
Wow. Sounds like the parents definitely picked correctly. And I absolutely agree. Like, I can just hear the compassion that you have for people, for humans in the career that you're in. And I love that you're showing the human side of law enforcement. It's not easy. And obviously, there's good and bad, right, in any
Yes.
profession. But you're showing the actual human side of it and that you do actually care about people. And sometimes you got to do some crazy things like blocking her off with your car, to listen to God because you know what God told you. And here you are, helping this girl. And it sounds like so she went to a Christian rehab. So is she with Jesus now? Like, is she
Yes.
following Christ?
Yes, she is. And I'm so proud of her. It did my
Oh,
heart so good. And we had a chance to talk about my upbringing.
Maurice, you're making me cry. Gotta wipe my nose. Man, what a beautiful testimony, to not only you're saving innocent people, but you're converting criminals to Jesus. And wow, I just wow, what a testimony you have. I feel like, the interview that I watched on YouTube didn't really do it justice. It was very short. And so I'm glad that I have been able to hear the whole backstory of everything. I think that that's so important for people. I love hearing about your own childhood as well and what brought you to it. I think that that's very inspirational for a lot of people because sometimes there are people who grow up in bad environments that, adapt to that and then they become part of that environment in as a way to survive. So I think that it's really cool that you're showing people there are other options, and that you were able to get out of that type of lifestyle. And even though right from the beginning you were, set up for failure and being told by your stepdad that you were nothing, and then you were brought to Jesus, and that's what brought you through all of this. I just love your testimony so much. And even still, you're retired, but you're writing books, you're coming on podcasts, and you're still continuing to share the word and share your testimony and how God has worked through you. So I just think it's all so beautiful.
God has just done some amazing things in my life, and I thank God for
Yeah.
my grandfather, who instilled um, sense of purpose and injected, God into my life, and
Yeah.
the interesting thing was he really had me go to regular church, and I told him I didn't understand, and that's when he
Mm.
allowed me to go to Sunday school, and that's when I was able to, uh, again, and it had another impact on me as well because I got so into reading the Word that and studying that I got skipped from the fifth to the seventh grade a year done with my grandfather. That's how much
Wow.
impact I found myself. You would find me two places: either my porch, devouring Bible lessons, reading my uncle's world, or reading my book encyclopedias, or at the library just a couple of feet from where I live. So this
Wow.
really had impact, and I would go on. This person who was told I was stupid and I would never amount to anything until I was retarded and everything else, go on to teach college, which I've been
Wow.
teaching for 25 years as an adjunct.
Wow. And thank you again. I mean, everything that you've done is just to service of other people. And I just think it's so beautiful that you answered that calling from God. We are all on behalf of anybody watching. Thank you for all of the service that you have done. And again, just continue to do. What does life look like for you now? You're retired, but you wrote the book. Like tell me about your life now.
Yeah, so I still teach as an adjunct professor at University of Maryland Global Campus, where I use a lot of my case studies from real cases to teach my students. I put them through the things I went through as a rookie or as a rookie detective, and they learn, from real world experiences, these cases that I had, they learn how to work through them. I was a student at University of Maryland Global Campus when I was a detective, and I had to figure this stuff out. There's things that weren't couldn't find in textbooks. So I'm enjoying that. I'm a government contractor, so I do that. I'm a private investigator now in Maryland, so I do that. I've taken acting classes in Las Vegas and in Maryland, so eventually I'd like to get into acting. I've done a commercial with my grandson, so far,
Oh,
yes.
how many grandbabies do you have?
I have five. Yeah,
You have 5.
yeah.
So beautiful. I'm about to have my first 2, so that's why I'm super excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. The first one actually is due next month, so it's coming up really quick. I'm very excited.
I know you are. That's the greatest joy in life for me.
Yeah,
Children and grandchildren. It's an enormous joy. I know that you're gonna really.
that's so cool. And when you're teaching now, are you able to tell people about Jesus, or do you have to keep that separate?
Yeah, yeah, you have to keep that separate.
I figured.
Yes, yeah, you have to keep it separate. But at least in my church, like I explained earlier, I'm in a mentoring program, so
Yeah.
I always teach a segment on public safeties. I get to talk to my students in church about you know, how how God has guided me through things and give them those
Mm.
strategies. Hearing how I started, they find very inspiring. How I inspired because an introvert. I've always been one. I'm still an introvert.
Yeah, but here you are pursuing acting and on podcasts, and you wrote a book. Talk about, with the strength of God, right? It's not something that you would typically do, but you know that that's what you're called to do. So that's so
Yes, indeed.
cool.
Lord, a man can plan his step, but the Lord determines our outcome. That's probably the most critical lesson from the Bible that my grandfather taught me. Never think you do things on your own strength because,
Yeah.
uh, for me being told I would never be anything, but the early intervention with Sunday school and my grandfather being a man of faith
Yeah.
helped me navigate the minefields of inner city life.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. I love that. And I hope that, well, hey, God's going to put you where you want to go. I was going to say, I hope that your acting career works out for you, but if it does, that's God.
Yes.
100%. And I love that you get to be that grandfather now, that grandfather who changed the direction of your life. And you now get to be that to 5 beautiful grandchildren and probably counting. Maybe you'll have more.
Yes, yes, no doubt that I will. And I tell you, it's really good. Several people told me, so Maurice, because my book is full of scriptures, with scriptures that I
Mhm.
refer to get through these difficult times in life. Brother being murdered,
Mm.
in Baltimore,
Yeah.
getting through that. My grandfather died right in the midst of this major investigation, and he was he's my anchor, my power source. And I was
Yeah.
fighting battles, numerous battles. I was fighting battles on the street, battles within the police department, people who didn't want to see me succeed. And I was still fighting those battles in my own mind from those demons trying to say, you're nothing. They got it right. Your stepfather got it right. The Marine Corps, was I remember when the drill instructor was telling me, you don't belong here. I'm like, oh my God, this man, he knows who I am. He's got my number.
Yeah.
He knows who I am.
Wow.
So yeah, still fighting those battles, because when you have these things, told to you for so long, it's difficult to overcome it sometimes.
Yeah. I'm so curious. So as you're sitting there and he did say this, like you don't belong here, you're different. What did that look like in your mind?
Yeah, I thought, like I said, I thought that he really could see who I was, that I'm nothing. I don't belong there. It's like, yeah, you're a substandard individual, son, but it's those Bible lessons. That's the only, and even though, I wanted to give up, my faith told me, I remember him telling me, son, tell me what I want to hear, son. I'm like, no, sir, you can fire me, but I ain't gonna quit. And I know he was baffled, like, why not?
Yeah.
You're just a little nerd. Why won't you quit? But that's why I wouldn't quit.
Yeah. So interesting. I love it. I love it. I love everything about your life testimony and what you're sharing with other people. It's beautiful. Very, very beautiful. So, is there anything to people who are watching that you would want to say to them? Maybe somebody who also struggles with the same things that you struggled with growing up. What would your message to them be?
I would say you're not who they say you are. You are who God says you are. And never think you have to accomplish things on your own strength. You have the Holy Spirit to guide you. And my son thinks I'm this brilliant person, but in reality, I'm an average learner. But God's just put this motivation in me, this determination that I can surpass people much more intelligent than I am and much more stronger than I am. But it's that God given determination, it's that David factor,
Yeah.
like when he was being chased by Saul in the wilderness,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, he had to remember things God brought him through in the past, how he
Mm,
defeated Goliath. And that's why I would say to people, remember your wins, remember things you got through,
mm,
And David was destined to be king, even though he
yeah.
was taken for 13 years in the wilderness, and he was about to be broken down in Ziklag, but that was his final step before he made king. So if you're being challenged, probably because you're anointed, you have to
Yeah.
remember that too, that not to give up. That hey, David was Hey, the oil didn't flow on the rest of them, but it flowed on David. No one saw it but
Yeah.
God and the prophet.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I love that. Well, again, just thank you so much and bless you. Bless your family and everything that you're doing. Tell people the name of your book and where to find it.
Yes, my name of my book is called Looking for Trouble. I have it here. I can hold it up to the camera. Looking for
Beautiful.
Trouble is a true crime memoir about my life growing up in Baltimore and using the word of God to get through unbelievable challenges.
Wow. And can people find you on social media as well?
Yes, I'm on Facebook and I have a website, mauricehicks.com.
Okay.
I'm also on LinkedIn and I'm on
Beautiful.
Instagram. And looking for Trouble 2020, looking for Trouble 2022 on Instagram.
Okay. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's watching. Maurice, you are such an inspiration to me as well. I love your testimony. You made me cry. And I will definitely pick up a copy of your book. I want to read it. I think you're such a humble man. And I can tell the compassion that you have for other people as well. So keep doing God's good work. And I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.